I'm not a big action RPG player. Honestly, the fact that I enjoyed Diablo 4 as much as I did in spite of its flaws that I will be talking about here is shocking. It shocked me. Diablo 4 is a game changer, and I feel that it's going to lead action RPGs into the mainstream. And I actually mean that. And that's the crazy thing, is after playing both beta weekends excessively, like I have way over 100 hours between the 2 weekends. I basically got no sleep. I actually mean what I just said. D4 is a game changer. Now let's talk about the negative reviews, because there is an onslaught of negative reviews, a tidal wave, a cataclysm of negative reviews telling me that I should refund the game and that I'm stupid. Hey, I've been there before. People told me this back when Final Fantasy XIV was launched, with A Realm Reborn saying, "Oh god, why are you playing that shitty game?" And guess what? I didn't care. I love Final Fantasy XIV and enjoyed it and played and simply didn't watch content dumping on it, leading me to make this channel like 2 years ago or something, and it's been a huge success of a game. Life is way too short for me to worry about not doing things I want to do. If I want to do a thing, I do the thing. Sometimes might make people real mad at me, but hey, kind of really sick of the moral grandstanding, honestly. You make content, you have 25k subscribers, you should be against Blizzard and not play this game. Be a leader. Deny yourself joy. Not going to linger on any point too long in this video, so the timestamps are going to be below. Each topic could easily be its own 10-minute video, but let's keep it short and sweet. First up is big, and it makes me as an MMORPG player more invested in Diablo 4. Many magnitudes more invested. The inclusion of those MMORPG elements, like you can bump into random players in cities, out in the field, you can group up and tackle any content with friends with what we would call a light party in Final Fantasy XIV, which is a group of 4. This immediately gets me more invested in the game, and I'm not a solo player, and that element of people and interacting with people is vital. This is a huge W in my books. Second point is that Diablo 4 has streamlined the ARPG experience, the action RPG experience. It's removed the bullshit and focused on gameplay. It's improved above other action RPGs. Other ARPGs in the past have things like Path of Exile, Last Epoch, and there are some pretty big pain points that turn me off in those games. You need to be able to have an accessible game. The casual player makes or breaks a game. The longer that I've played games, the more often this is true. I lost one of my favorite games, WildStar, to this. Coming from Final Fantasy XIV, we did have at one point a piece of content called Eureka. We had EXP loss in the builds that you'd farm out in Eureka, and I loved Eureka. But that content made people scream at the top of their lungs. You can still mention Eureka, and the horror that you evoke from some people is, and don't tell them this, it's kind of freaking hilarious. Now, let's talk about on how it improves over these other ARPGs. Firstly, inventory Tetris is awful. I don't know why anyone would want to willingly deal with this. If I'm playing an action RPG, by its own name, I want action, not mind-numbing inventory management. Diablo 4 completely streamlines this. Thank goodness. Second thing is skill trees, builds, itemization. If you come from World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, I strongly feel that these systems will be comfortable. Path of Exile, frankly, is impenetrable for the average player. As someone who does enjoy building things and customizing things, and that's something that I do enjoy in games, I will happily, eagerly build myself into Gimped character, which then, because I don't have the extremely expensive Orbs of Regret to try and respect my mess of a character, that mess of a character is now bricked. Gonna be honest with you, I have no desire to restart a character, period. I do not have the time for that. But what I'm constantly hearing and shocked by the majority of criticisms of Diablo 4 is that it isn't as advanced as Path of Exile. But the problem is most of these same people are copy-pasting entire builds from IcyVeins, Maxroll, or Diablo fans and not even interacting with this interface on a meaningful level. Then these same people who pretend this makes their big brain wrinkly and that their chin is chiseled like a Chad because they do this build copy pasting. Man, Diablo 4 simplifies this to the point that I think a more casual audience could genuinely engage with this meaningfully, with building the character meaningfully. This doesn't require you to open up a website to copy paste someone else's 8-hour spreadsheet stream that they spent streaming a particular very finely tuned witch build. You can make a Earth Druid or a Werewolf Druid that works easily, no hassle. Big Diablo 4 W in my opinion. Thirdly is acquiring and using skills in D4 is super clear. Making your hotbar very, very clear. There are no convoluted systems in your way. You unlock the skills, you put them on your bar. As an action RPG game, I want to be doing the action and engaging in the content. Last point, because I want to avoid diving into minutia, is that death in D4 outside of hardcore does have less meaning, and that's very important. Like, there is no EXP loss, there's no real hassle, it's rinse and repeat. If the butcher gets you, oh well, move on. Obviously you can choose a hardcore character if you want, but I know a lot of people really don't want to do that, myself being one. And this is huge for a more casual audience, which actually will be the mass majority of your player base. Death is annoying. Making it more annoying is good to turn off people. Let's talk about other game changers. Firstly, this game's story is spectacular. No spoilers here. It's a bit too dark for me personally, even though I logically know something like some of the dungeons simply could not exist in the world like that. Like flat out could not. But the story itself is super good, and I come from 14, and so that's a hard sell to make me engage in a story. I can see people simply buying the base game and playing for the story and feeling satisfied. That's a win. More people trying the game, more people getting into it, maybe they're getting hooked into the game systems and like, hey, I want to play more of this. This is just a flat out win. Next up is the game's aesthetics are outrageously good. The graphics are without competition in the ARPG space. Footage in the background speaks for itself. Also, the barbarian's hot. This leads into my next point, that character creation is extremely solid, but I feel it could be taken a few steps further. I feel extremely uncomfortable looking at my necromancer or sorcerer as someone who has had eating problems in the past. I just have no desire to play at them because they're really painfully well. It just makes me feel really hella uncomfortable. I don't like them whatsoever. I went to the gym, I ate a whole lot of food, I got big. Don't like the necromancer, don't like the sorcerer. I want to be able to customize them further. While character creation is very, very decent, we do need to touch more in my opinion. I really do believe so. Once that's there, I think it'll be great, but until nah. I'm gonna give them huge credits because this genre is unfortunately filled with gender locks, and I don't want to play as a little girl. Probably sounds petty, but yeah, I'm not a little girl. I'm not about that whole, I want to be a kawaii little cat girl, woo, fantasy. That's super awkward to me. That is another thing that I know myself and others won't like. Or for others, they don't want to be something like a male warrior, they want to be a female warrior. I'm going to make a joke that another win is just having druid, werewolves, werebears, barbarian with an arsenal of weapons, big beards, and the rest is obviously wins in my book. Final Fantasy XIV needs beards desperately. That fits my aesthetic. Now let's talk about the pain points of Diablo IV. Firstly, WASD movement must be added to Diablo IV. I will not back off of this because I truly believe in it 100%. It's not just an accessibility feature. We have people with rheumatoid arthritis. We have people with freaking carpal tunnel syndrome. This is not an option. I will not back down from this point. I really think this is important. Secondly is the balance. I love Barbarian and Druid, and both of them are factually not doing great in the beta, which made frankly the most awful first impression ever. I place less importance on this, and maybe a more cautious person with more experience with World of Warcraft balance would. I presume and hope that they will balance this out, but during the beta, playing Druid and then Necromancer side by side was painful. Second point is some classes are extremely legendary dependent, namely Druid. This slows down gameplay a lot and makes it rough to even compete. Necromancer with no legendaries was doing as well, if not better, than my legendary built Druid I showcased. That does not feel good. It really lends itself hand in hand to the third point, which is even getting those legendaries is not realistic. Seasons are only 3 months long in this game. They said that they're going to try and do 4 a year. I've came from grindy games in the past, and oftentimes RNG has not shined at all favorably on me. 3 months to complete a build sounds next to impossible, but being my first entry into the ARPG Diablo series, maybe legendaries are more common than I'm led to believe. Beta, I was told, was super crazy inflated. Still couldn't finish Storm Werewolf build, for instance. So maybe it's not as bad as I think in my mind, but if it's as bad as other games I've played in the past, there's no way in 3 months you're completing a build. To that end, I can truly see it as frustrating to people to not have any inevitability whatsoever to see your character only be shelved at the end of the season. I can understand people don't want cookie cutter builds. Heck, I don't. That's so boring. But I can tell if I can't do something like a support druid or werewolf druid, I'm going to be super bummed out at the end of the season. That will make casual players super unhappy. I'm not asking for handouts, but if I break down 10 legendaries that I don't want for 1 legendary that I do want, that sounds fair. That's 10 legendaries that you got. Fourth point is dungeons, and this is a dark tunnel, but it also has a light at the end. The devs already said that they're addressing the awful clunkiness in dungeons. In the beta, going back for a clear the entire floor mission really sucked. Devs already said that this is being addressed, but the dungeon design was kind of a larger problem brought up by people. Coming from Warframe, this is not as big of a problem as a lot of people are imagining. These are very clearly tile set dungeons, and the nice thing is if your problem is adding a few tile sets, you have very little problems. For the cons, most of them are either addressed already or will be addressed shortly. Now for my final thoughts on the game, Diablo IV I genuinely think is a genre-changing shakeup of a game. I think that it's learned from the past mistakes of other games in the genre and improved upon them, streamlining the effects, something that Blizzard is very well known for.